This is a test of the Boundary Park alert system. Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Boundary Park alert system with me, Matt Dean. This week I'm joined by Daily Mail journalist and Oldham fan Mike Keegan. Mike is no stranger to controversy amongst the Latics faithful. His reporting is often critical of the club he supports, and during the course of this conversation he shares his views on the current administration, his thoughts on the local and national media coverage that the club receives, and his hopes for the future of the club and the town. But first, Mike and I discuss the game against Salford, from which, despite all logic, Oldham snatched 3 points from the dismayed grasp of Richie Wellings and Paul Scholes right at the very death.
Hi mate.
How are you doing, Mike?
I'm alright, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
We're good.
Yeah. Have you watched the match?
Yeah, I have. I thought I'd better add. And at half time I was going to say to you, I'm going to invoice you a tenner because this is horrendous. But no, take the 3 points. I think that's all you can say, really.
It's mad, isn't it? I was gearing up for a proper rant on this podcast at half time. I really was. I thought I'm going to be fuming at the end of this, but I can't believe that we won that match. I really can't.
No.
So thanks for coming on, podcast.
No problem.
Thanks for coming on. Obviously, Latics have been back in the news this week, so it seems apt to get somebody whose job and profession is the news to come onto the podcast this week. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to pull together all the different threads that kind of connect Latics together in terms of, it's quite, we've actually drawn it out a bit of a map with the club in the middle and a bit of a spider diagram and all the things that go off it. And just, I mean, what the club connects with and affects is massive across the community. You know, and spreads even across the world. As you might know, I'm based in Dublin, and a lot of the fans that I've spoken to since I've been doing this podcast are based all around the world.
Yeah,
Latics can be international news, can't they? Even though sometimes we feel that maybe they're not getting enough coverage locally. So I think what I wanted to talk to you about was about coverage of a club like Latics from your point of view as a journalist, and you can tell us a bit about what it's like from the inside, and also just to talk to you as a fan. Like, we're coming off the back of that win. Like, I think we were probably both thinking that we were going to have a different conversation at half time than what I was gearing up for a proper rant. I thought, oh, Mike's up for a really good rant here about Latics at half time, because we were hopeless, weren't we, that first half?
Abysmal.
There were so many poor performances. Did the wind drop at half time, or did they just make it look like the wind dropped?
I think they just dealt with it better. Well, you say dealt with it better than we did. We scored 2 goals and they only scored 1, but
true.
Yeah, the first half, I mean, it could have been 5. The woodwork, 3-4 times in the first half on its own and then twice again in the second. But it's the amount of times we'll have been to Boundary Park and seen us batter teams and then scrape a 2-1 win. But I don't think you can say that was anything other than a fluke today.
No, I definitely agree. We didn't look at all cohesive that first half, did we? I was screaming at Kewell. I thought that left-hand side, for their first goal, there was no pressure on him for that easy ball in. And it seemed like our shape was like too narrow in the final 2/3 of the pitch, and he just didn't seem to do anything. And I thought he's riding his luck so much here. He tinkers with the team a lot, sort of in between and starting, but he doesn't seem to do anything during the game when there's obvious things that need addressing, for me. Anyway, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, John Barty, my word. I know we've had some bad players over the years, but that first half from him was one of the worst that I've seen. I saw a great tweet actually at half time. If defensive first, then if we had Terrell Forbes and Lord Kangana at the back, pretty much summed it up for me. And then obviously, you know, the elephant in the room is that you've got a former England under-21 with Premier League experience who you're paying, but you won't play him.
It's absolutely criminal, isn't it? It really is criminal.
Yeah, it's one of those, you've got to be careful because it's an ongoing situation, and, you know, we don't know everything that's gone on, but you're paying the guy. Like, you've seen that before. And, the worst thing is that I don't know how they've managed it, but they've ended up with some decent players this season. So I really like the kid from Leeds, McCalman.
Today, actually.
Yeah, I spoke to somebody from Leeds about something else the other week, and we were talking about him, and he said that he wasn't a million miles away from the first team at Leeds. Bielsa really rates him. And when there was a lot of speculation over Calvin Phillips, whether he was going to go at some point, I think it was last season, he thought that Bielsa wouldn't have had any qualms in sticking McCalman straight in the team and not even paying for a replacement for Phillips. So, I mean, that's Bielsa. He can work wonders with players, but I do like him. And you can see with the team, when we're on the break and we've got the ball at our feet, there are some very talented players on the ball, but it's just, if you're going to try and hit teams on the break, if that's how you're setting up, then it's pretty fundamental that you have a decent defence.
Yeah.
And when you don't, you struggle. I mean, I watched the game I paid for the game at Cheltenham on whenever it was, Tuesday night, and that was just depressing. Like, because they scored and you knew there's not a chance we've got anything within this squad that will have any joy against a team like Cheltenham.
When we come up against those, like, what you might call a proper League Two team, we've just struggled so badly, haven't we?
Just physical and strong and put you under a lot of pressure, get a lot of balls into your box. Like, I don't, people talk about like the flow of the team and how you need to be able to play out from the back, and how there might be an argument that if you put Wheater in, then it slows things down. I can't see that putting Wheater in is going to make that side worse than it is.
No, definitely not. And do we really want to be playing out from the back all the time? We don't like it when teams press us, and it's given us loads of headache this season.
Yeah.
And this is League Two. It's not. There's teams in the top divisions that struggle playing out from the back because it doesn't suit who you've got in your personnel, and the manager's job, the coach's job, I guess, especially even more so when you've got someone like Moore bringing in certain players, is to get the team playing the way that suits them, not the way that you think they should be playing. You can try that, but when it doesn't work, sometimes you have to say, well, this isn't working, we need to change it around. I don't think we're a long ball team either, having said that, because we've not got that. I mean, I thought Grant today worked really hard, like he'll chase down everything. He works tirelessly, but he's not a centre forward, is he?
No, I don't think we've got a centre forward.
No. Danny Rose scored 2 for Bradford.
He scored for Brad. They'll be overtaking us soon on the back of Danny Rose goals. A great move that was. Yeah, there were a couple of occasions this afternoon where we actually put decent balls in the box and there's no one anywhere near it. But look, we've won, so
I know.
It's girlish, but it didn't feel like a win. It just felt like weird, like I said before, like a fluke, really.
I'm finding it hard to get excited, really excited about things, about wins and stuff, because there's not that momentum where you feel that it's like you win one, you lose one. We've won the last 2 home games, which is great. If we can get that momentum, we're creeping towards the playoffs, and I definitely will get excited if we get up there. But we're still not brought into that top half of the table yet. And like you said, if we're going to keep conceding goals like we do, we're probably not going to get there. I think we definitely need a good signing up front, don't we, in this window? And like you said, there are some good players, but there are people that are out of position or not good enough in that position around the park. You can see it today, and that's where we lack, and where teams are able to just exploit those gaps where there's the weaknesses. And that's what you see with those more solid teams. They have players that are not necessarily technically brilliant, but are really good at their job at that point on the pitch, kind of thing. And yeah, first half I was ready to come on and really give them a slating, but you can't really after the second half performance, can you?
They were much better after the break, and clearly the wind did have a big impact. I've got to be honest, I saw the Cheltenham game, I saw the Grimsby game, and that's been it. I've seen them 3 times this season because it's not my football club anymore. It's not. I can't get excited about it because it just doesn't feel like my football club. Not under the current regime, not with everything that's happened. I don't see where we're going. I think it's bizarre that we find ourselves 6 points off the playoffs. I'm delighted with that we're 13 points away from the relegation zone, because that was my fear at the start of the season. But it's not. I mean, they play in blue and white, and you hear Mouldy Old Dough at half time and the boys in blue before kick off. And for me, that's where any kind of connection to this football club and the current regime ends. I find it very difficult to get. God, this is depressing, isn't it? I'm sorry, but I find it very, very difficult to get any kind of emotion whatsoever. So they've won today. Great. Really bothered. They were going to get, at half time, it looked like they were going to get thrashed again. Not, that bothered, really. Because there's just, I just find it incredibly difficult to have a connection to them. I don't see any strategy. I don't see where it's going. It remains a mess for me, and I find it very hard to identify with the football club.
Yeah, well, you're definitely not alone. I mean, I didn't start this podcast because I wanted to talk about the football all the time and, ignore the other stuff. I started this podcast because I didn't feel like I was getting the other stuff. I wanted to talk about what's really going on at Boundary Park, realistically, from week to week, because that's the way it's been going, hasn't it, at Latics? There's a story, if not every week, regularly enough. And the stuff that I was listening to, and reading. Now, having said that, I live in Dublin. I know you can access media from anywhere now, but I don't listen to the post-match phone-ins and things like that. And I've never been a big one for reading the papers, really, the national papers. I've never really read national papers. I used to go straight to the back of the Cron every night when I lived at home and read that, and that was it. But I like it to just tell it as it is. And like you've just said there, you've summed it up. Beating Salford today, we needed to beat them, and I'm glad we beat them, because I didn't want to go 2 home games, 2 away games against Salford and not manage to beat them once. So that's that I fell back. But there's so many fans that are disconnected from it. And when you're talking to Carl, I think he gets it now. Carl Evans kind of gets that. Abdallah is still not acknowledging that is an issue. And I don't think he ever will, do you? I don't think he's ever going to. I don't think it's going to go into his head, and if it does, he'll ever come out and say it.
If there's no recognition by now, I don't think there ever will be. I listened to your podcast with Carl. Fair play to him for coming on, and fair play to him for engaging with fans on social media. He's in a very, very difficult position, I would imagine. It made me laugh a little bit when he kept talking about Twitter. He's quite close. Somebody hadn't liked anything, and they'd done this tweet over, and they didn't get many likes. It's like, come on, bigger picture. For me and my mates who are Latics fans, we are at an all-time low. It is very difficult to get enthusiastic about the football. I mean, you see it today. Why are the LED boards not switched on? What's going on there?
The broke apparently.
Fix Sky, the main sponsor. I think Oldham vending, and that there's 4 sponsors in the ground. What's going on? Do you know what I mean? We've got to stand there that touch wood when we get back into grounds, the best stand in the ground. People can't sit in. It's absolutely ludicrous. I sit in the main stand, but I know a lot of people go in there and like it in there, and the facilities in there are great. And I'd like to think at some point in life, probably when I'm retired now, but you would spend money. You'd have a day out, maybe once a season. Me and a few of my mates would pay to get a box or to go and have a meal there and, do it properly. And to not even be able to do that, it's a very, very long story. There are a lot of factors at play. And the big thing to remember here is Abdallah bought the club. He put his money where his mouth is. He's still paying the bill. I can't imagine financially it's something that's making a profit for him. So credit's got to go to him for that. He's keeping the club afloat. Now, I get it. I see a lot of people, get him out. Let's concentrate on getting him out. Well, what's the alternative? And for me, I'm 42 now. And when I was a kid, I was a big Oldham rugby fan. So my dad used to take me, we got Latics on the Saturday and we go watching Oldham rugby on the Sunday. And then they died, went bankrupt in, I think it was 97. And that pains me still to this day. But it's I was 19 at the time. and not really in a position to do anything about it. And now I just think all of us should be looking at a way to try and find something better. So for me, and I'll acknowledge this, I'm in a privileged position with the job that I do. I do have access to people who, big businesses and within football, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know what, maybe this year then I'll start to see if there is anything that I can do, see if there's any conversations I could start, see if I can gauge if there is anyone interested out there. But that is, for me, what, as fans, that's what, if we can, that's what we should be trying to do. I don't think the trust is fit for purpose. I think it's a joke, if I'm being honest. Just as a silly little example, but yesterday there was a tweet. Tom Heyman went to Burton and there was a tweet there, talking about it being a great move and congratulations, really good. It's Burton. He's gone to Burton. We're Oldham Athletic. Why is that a good move? Like, is it really that bad? Like, is that really what we expect? Come on, and there was another tweet from the trust about we need to focus on a long-term strategy to keep the club in the town. It's simple. Find an alternative. It's difficult, but the solution itself is simple. What we need to do is find, ideally, a group of wealthy, well-meaning people who've got Oldham's best interests at heart, business people, and put something together that gets this club back to what it should be. Now, the big issues there are obviously the ground situation, which for me, the previous ownership should not be immune from criticism. The fact that football clubs can be separated from grounds, I think that should be banned. I think that should be made illegal. Now, the counter to that might be that they would never have come in and bought the club if it didn't come with the land, so I understand that. But that needs to be fixed. Yeah, it's hard to pin it all on Abdallah because clearly he was dealt a very poor hand when he arrived. For me, he's not helped himself with the decisions that he's made when he's there. I dread to think how much money this has cost and how, if that money was spent properly on getting the right players and putting the right systems in place and foundations in place where we might be now, I think it's ridiculous that we got relegated to League Two, and it's well versed, what was going on behind the scenes in that season. So yeah, I'm waffling now, but going back to the original point, I just think if you are of a mind that, like a lot of us are, this is the lowest point in the club's history in our lifetimes, then it's all well and good saying get him out, get Mo out, get them all out. You've got to find a replacement, and finding that for me is key to the future. And again, Abdallah's got to want to sell. Now, we had Brexit, and I don't mind saying I didn't vote for Brexit, but one of the consequences of it would appear to me that his business model, if that was to bring in players from the lower French divisions, bring them here, put them in the shop window, they'll play where you can sell them on for a profit. I mean, it's not happened, has it? Initially went to Northampton on a free. It's doomed to failure from the start for me. There's a reason nobody's done it before. But if that is the business plan, then that's gone now because Brexit means that you're not going to be able to get the players in within the numbers that you'd want to make that happen. So I'd like to know what it would take. Like, what are we talking here? So how much would it cost, to buy the football club? I think that's a key thing. And then with regards to the deal for the land and the stands, I had this utopian dream where you would get, say, for example, Jim Ratcliffe, richest man in Britain, is from Oldham, where he's from Failsworth. So, as you will know, if you're from Failsworth, you're a bit more mank than Oldham. You tend to, no offence to any Latics fans listening to this who are in Failsworth, and he's a United fan. But in a dream world, you get in front of Jim Ratcliffe and you say, look, there is an opportunity here for you to do something amazing for your hometown, some corporate social responsibility. He's clearly got an interest in sport. If he's trying to buy Chelsea, you'd think Latics wouldn't be that much of a problem financially.
He's got Nice, didn't he?
He's got Nice, yeah. So then you would try and get some interest there. And then you go to the council and you say, you know what? It's a mess. The whole thing is a mess. They want ludicrous money for Boundary Park that you're never going to get on all the land. You've just spent a load of money on the Spindle shopping centre. You must, what we want to do with a wealthy backer on board or with investors on board is we want to regenerate part of Oldham. And to do that, we want to build a stadium. So where Matalan used to be, for example, at the side of the bypass, going out towards Glodick. We want to build it there, and we want to regenerate that part of town that's clearly not in great shape, and it's next to a huge Asian area, so it's got cultural benefits for everybody, and we'll breathe life into that. We'll get the rugby back from wherever they are, if the Staley Bridge next season, and we'll build a community stadium, and we'll have a proper go at it. That's the dream for me, but that's exactly what it is. It's a dream. So, how do we get to that point? I think is what we should be trying to focus on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm doing this podcast from Dublin because I want to be a part of that, and I want other fans to buy into it. And I think that in order to attract that investment and that interest, that's our responsibility as fans to show potential investors that there's a fan base. It might not be showing up at Boundary Park, but there's a fan base in this town, behind this town, and behind this club that are there, that are ready to put their money in. And that's what the work we have to put in. And like you said before, that's where the trust has fallen down and trust has failed, because they've not been able to do that with local businesses and fans, because they've been too scared to upset the club, and they've been too busy infighting with each other, and they've become ineffective. So, you've got Push the Boundary now who have filled the void, and they've got people on side. There's people now putting out podcasts talking about Oldham. You've social media. We've got a very active hashtag. We can keep going. We just have to keep banging the drum about what is good about the town, what is good about the support, and it is passionate. But we have to focus it and coordinate it. And like you said, we have to get the right people with influence involved. There needs to be a plan for this football club going forward, because the future of it is clearly not Abdallah. He's going to have to sell at some point. He's not going to be around we don't know how long he's going to be around for, but he's not got the deep enough pockets to do what is ultimately needed. And does a club like Oldham need more fans involved? Fan ownership, partial fan ownership, so we take responsibility for the club going forward. A desirable model for the future of this football club and for the town, and an acknowledgement of how important the two are for each other. Like you said there, it's at the heart of the town. And like you said, I like the idea of the stadium being where you described it. I can imagine it on the bypass. You can see it right in the middle of town. And people are going to have to say, right, if they've got the ideas, and like people like yourself, like you've already alluded to, you've got the ideas, and you feel that you might have a bit of influence, it's time for those people to start doing. Because otherwise, this state of apathy just leads us to exactly where we are now. Like you said, it's not all Abdallah's fault, but what we've done is we've let it get to the point where someone like him comes in, and then this is what we're left with.
For me, we are sleepwalking towards going out of existence. And a 2-1 win over Salford isn't going to stop that from happening without wanting to be a massive down on it. So I can't stress enough that is, for me, what we've got to try and do. I know it's easier said than done. I know that a lot of people will not see it as a viable proposition, certainly not in its current state, with the land and the ground separated from the club itself. Got to look at ways to try and get around that. But I agree with you. Like, for me, we've got the best. You really see, for me, Oldham Athletic when we play away, in normal times, obviously. So if there's a big away match, a Fulham in the FA Cup, however many 4,000, 4,500 down at Craven Cottage. That's Oldham for me. That's the potential. That's what this club is about. It's a huge town of 250, 260,000 people. Yeah, we've got United City on the doorstep. Everybody knows that. But I still cling on to this view that there is an identity and a pride in being from Oldham.
Definitely.
I think like, I don't live in Oldham anymore. I'm over on the dark side in Yorkshire now, but I do like, maybe it's just because you get away from the place, but I do, and there is potential for me. We're both biased because we're Oldham fans. If you're a similar age to me, we will have seen much better times. We will have seen when we held certain clubs as our equals.
We're the same age, Mike, so yeah, I know. Exactly, I'm 42 as well, so
yeah, so
we've been through exactly the same journey with the club.
Yeah, and I get it. I get that, Joe pulled off his miracle by going and getting players from City's reserves and, Everton's reserves. And I've spoken to him about it, and he could pay them the same and with bonuses more than they were getting in their reserve teams. And obviously now, can you imagine you went to City, you try and get a kid and they're on 15, 20 grand a week, you've no chance. But I do think with a solid foundation, with proper management, proper people running the club, doing your bit in the community, which they already do, so that, as a legacy from the Premier League, we are fortunate that we have a great community department, a decent academy, just proper people involved. I think you could average 4,500 a week in League Two. And that's not far off, upper echelons of League Two with a fan base like that. I don't think.
That's where we were at when we got relegated that first season. We had an increase in season two. Yeah. And then they sacked Wellens pre-season. He just signed Jose Baxter and then they got rid of him. Yeah. And it was straight away, it was like, oh, if they'd have just left it, look, you've got Wellens in charge. The season ticket sales were up. Yeah. Baxter had just re-signed. It was like, there's clearly some momentum, but they couldn't stop themselves from interfering. And then Frankie Bunn came in, then he was gone while we were in 7th and doing all right.
Yeah.
And that's when it all was just like, yeah. And from then it was clear that we were dealing with people who didn't know what they were doing, basically.
The advantage of that, the benefit of that, if there is one, is that the bar is set that low now. It's that crap, and it's been that crap, being an Oldham fan for that long. Any kind of, if you came in on a campaign of rebirth, for example, using like a, shitty marketing thing, but that is something that people will get behind because we all feel it. We're all fed up. We're desperate. If you're an Oldham fan now, you'll always be an Oldham fan. If you're putting up with all this, then, and I just think any glimmer of anything for us to cheer for and get behind could really take off. But again, it's going back to that early point. How do we make that happen?
There's only so much we can do as fans at the end of the day because the day-to-day management of the club is going to continue out of our hands. This churn of managers, players, more as a sporting director. There's nothing we can do about that. All we can do is, I'm kind of seeing it almost as like, well, we need to just build our own vision of what we want the club to be. And that is an in-depth process of fan consultation through things like Push the Boundaries, ideally through the trust. I get the trust on the podcast and like, what's your vision? And they should be able to spell that out very, very easily. The vision should be something like, we want to own a 25% stake in Oldham Athletic. And we want to be on the board making the decisions. We want to tell the club how to spend the money that we contribute. Something like that, end of. And then they've got a very clear directive that as fans we can buy into.
Yeah.
That's not the case. But I think, don't let the club carry on doing what they're doing. But on what we need to do is we need to build this version of the club that we want. And we get enough people to buy into that, then maybe we can get somebody else to come in and literally buy into it. Do you know what I mean?
And that it all comes back to the money. And that's the big issue. You'll see the pictures behind me at Oakwell. Currently, we've sold our house and we're waiting to move into a new one. So we're the in-laws at the moment. And my father-in-law was the Barnsley chairman for a time when they had their time in the season in the Premier League, and in the family for a long time. And he said, we speak about Oldham a lot, and it we've been a couple of times last season, and it kills him because when he was chairman, he knew Ian Stott really well. He knows Joe Rowe really well. And as somebody from Barnsley, who's, you'd see them as our equals, you and I would see them as our equals, certainly. And you go there to Barnsley's ground now, and you're looking at a totally different proposition than what we've got. But he said going back to the point, they had a supporters trust when he was there. And he said to them, what you need to do, you need to make sure that if anything ever goes disastrously wrong, and it ended up doing the ITV digital stuff there, you are ready to step in. So you need to make sure you've got the funding to keep it going until you can find a buyer. You need to make sure you've got the expertise there, people who can run the club, who can, secretarial stuff, the accounts, etc., etc. And you need to make sure, commercially you're still ticking over. You've got people who can work on your media stuff. You've got to have something ready to go if the nuclear button gets pressed. And for me, that's simple. That's all the trust should be about. And I think they are a million miles away. I might be wrong, and I'd love it if they said, no, you actually might. We've got all plans in place, and we've got funding to see it through for a couple of months, or preferably longer. I don't think that's the case.
No, it's definitely not the case. I mean, I've had them on, like I said, and put those questions, not so much like that, but ask them to, tell us where they are, what they're doing, and they might argue that they're going through a bit of a transitional period and whatnot, but it seems very like a closed shop. It doesn't feel like our trust,
No.
like it represents us as fans. That's what it needs to do. It's got a hell of a lot of work to do.
Is there a certain percentage of the club that they own, and if they've got a seat on the board? I think that they are conflicted by that. I mean, let's be honest, that place on the board makes absolutely zero difference. It's not worth having. So remove that conflict, make yourself stronger, challenge the club properly.
Yeah.
But whether we'll see that, I don't know.
Well, the way my view on it is, and what I've said to the trust as well, is ask the fans what you want the trust to be. Say to put some proper surveys, use Push the Boundary, and use the success that they've had in their surveys, and ask the fans to say, we are the Oldham Athletic Supporters Trust. How do you want us to represent you? And put it out to the largest number possible and work off that, because that way the fans will back that, because it's democratic and it's finding out truly what they want. And at the minute, they're just a small number of people doing what they think is the right thing to do. It's getting them nowhere.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
So, yeah.
Hey, it's cheery, this, isn't it?
Imagine what it would have been like.
Podcast.
Imagine what it would have been like if we'd lost.
I know, yeah. As I say, it's irrelevant for me. We beat Salford. We scabbed it, really. So what? It doesn't change any of the fundamental issues that remain at the club. So.
No, I agree totally. It does papers over any cracks when you win the odd match or whatever. But look, I mean, if we go up somehow, that'll make everyone feel a little bit better. But I think it will be. Look, we'll see. But I mean, how do you find it? Because Latics fans are a rare breed, aren't we? For many reasons. I think the fact that we have to go and turn up and sit at one of the coldest grounds in the country, watching some of the worst football you can imagine. We're hard to please, I think it's fair to say, as a collective. Anyone who's in the public eye tends to get a bit of stick. How do you find that? How do you find you get a good bit of stick as someone who people know quite well?
I think it's been worse than it is now. Look, it annoys me sometimes, and I know it shouldn't when you get people. It's worse when Keegan wrote that story before we played Northampton and got relegated. It's like, well, that's not right. I didn't write that story. That's just not true. And everything, it's hard because tweets are only however many characters there are. It's hard. Like, it's good to come on things like this and get it across. Like, I'm a Latics fan first and foremost. I want what's best for the club, and that guides pretty much everything that I do. It's difficult because I work for a national newspaper, and my editor wouldn't mind me saying, and I've said this before, there's just not that much interest in it. So that's where it was great to see the piece in The Athletic. I know Danny and Phil, the lads who did it, and was delighted when they came to me and said, we're looking at doing this piece on Oldham. But going back to the flat, I get it. I'm in a privileged position. I love my job. I'm lucky to have the job that I have. And I just think it's heartening because you get lots of messages now from people kind of sticking up for you. That makes you think, it is worthwhile. I just think we don't have a local media now to hold the club to account. I get on really well with Matt Chambers and still speak to him quite often. And the Crom going was a disaster for me. Not just for sport, for everything in the town. That your local paper holds your councils to account, holds your town hall to account, holds your sports clubs to account. So for the Crom to go, for a town the size of Oldham not to have a daily newspaper was devastating. And I think the club have got away with a lot since that happened. Now, having said that, I know the Oldham Times has started coming out every day. So hopefully they will be able to fill that gap. Local radio is not, it's difficult for the BBC because they, I would imagine, have to try and keep a decent relationship going with them. But I just think I'm one of few people who, in a small way, are able to try and hold them to account. So, that helping the guys from the Athletic to do that piece was a little way of doing that. And it's just, I don't want to sound like, it's difficult to say this without sounding like a knob, to be blunt, but my job is Premier League pretty much. And it's not, I find it very difficult to ever write stuff on Oldham. But if I can encourage others to do it, and I'll do my bit, try and do my bit that way. And I don't mind the flack because I get it. There are people who, even now, and I find it astounding, even now think that we are on the right track, and improvements are being made and it's going to be all right. I wish that I had that faith that they've got. I just think it's misguided. But I think a lot of people are like this in the media. We all have our own football clubs that we support, and a lot of us don't support the big clubs. So you try and do your bit, and it doesn't have to be slating them all the time or criticising them all the time. If we get to the stage where good things start to happen, then, it's only right that you report that as well. I just don't see good things happening.
Look, as well, the other side of it is bad news gets more attention than good news, doesn't it? That's just, I've seen looking at the reactions that tweets get. And, if you wanted to just be a bit more nasty and a bit more vindictive and say those kind of things about people, they tend to get a better response than if you're trying to be balanced or, I'm trying to pitch this podcast as critical, but balanced and responsible and trying to look at all the different sides. Yeah. Very easy to rant and rave and put out tweets calling people's names and, just getting it, doing it for the clickbait kind of thing. But that's not of any real long-standing value, is it? So, like you're saying there with Latics, there's not going to be that much interest in a football team that performs poorly consistently for like 20 years, finishing 17th in League One, then gets relegated beyond a very small hardcore of fans. And it's only these bigger negative stories that actually gather any kind of wider attention and interest because something more interesting to read. And it must be difficult for you as a fan to put stuff out like that because, you feel, how do you feel when you write an article like, a big article like you did for the Mail a couple of years ago and you have to put it out? How does it make you feel as a fan and a journalist at the same time?
As a fan, I feel like I'm doing my duty because I think people need to know about this and these people need to be held accountable. As a journalist, I'm just not very popular with the boss because Mike Keegan wants to write about Oldham again because it's not, as I said, it's not top of their agenda. It's difficult to describe. I think as long as you're fair, that's the main thing. So I get a lot of grief. I get people send me anonymous emails. I've got a pretty good idea who they are, saying, "Oh, why are you having a go at Abdallah? You never, why is it just Abdallah? Rah, rah, rah." It's utter nonsense. Simon Corney didn't speak to me for 2 years in the previous regime. We had a bit of a fallout over. I didn't like when Lee Johnson went to Barnsley and that season that had so much promise kind of petered out. And my view of that was kind of, what's the point? What's the point of being an Oldham fan if we get a rare glimpse at doing something half decent? The manager goes to Barnsley. We put Dino to replace him, and it didn't look like he was given any kind of backing to strengthen his squad. What's the point?
That came off the back of the whole Ched Evans thing and all, didn't it?
Yeah.
This big negative focus on the club again.
Yeah. And I just felt really kind of let down by that. And I would imagine that there was a bigger financial picture at the time that probably prompted those decisions, which is hard for me to kind of get behind if I'm a fan and I just want to see the team do as well. It was a very rare glimpse at maybe doing something decent that just beaten out. And God, we kill for those days now in League One. So I didn't, we fell out over that side, and that was when I think I'd tweeted about the Brass Bank special that everybody refers back to because I think he'd done a video with a website and there was some kind of bigger deal or something like that. And that was my response. Now, people often ask about that, and I've had a couple of people ask about it before coming on here. It was pretty simple at the time, and people all know this now, that Oldham Council had given them a grant towards the building of the North Stand. And for me, as a council taxpayer in Oldham, I didn't think that was right, that council taxpayers' money should be going towards funding something that ultimately is not going to be owned by the football club. However, you then look at why that happened and the whole shambles over Failsworth and the amount of money that cost the people involved. And it's, you see why that happened. So you kind of understand it a bit more. But again, I'm rambling, but going back to the original point, holding the football club to account isn't something that just happened since Abdallah arrived. It's something that I've tried to do from day one. And I'm trying to think, well, I think that I am fair and balanced in what I'm doing. And I would have much rather have written a piece about Paul Scholes leading us to the first promotion we've had since bloody 1991 and what that felt like for a football fan who, you know, as I put in the tweet the other day, had supported, for me, the worst football team in the country to support for the last 20 odd years. I would have much rather written that piece than one about the absolute shambles that faced him when he turned up.
You see, it was a massive, massive coup getting Paul Scholes as the manager. Huge. A proper international footballing star. One of the best footballers of his generation. To come to Oldham. Unbelievable. And it really could, I mean, big news over here in Ireland. Big news all around the world. The camera lenses and the reporters were trained on Boundary Park to see what was going to happen. And it lasted 31 days. And it was just, because I was going to say to you, I was thinking earlier as we were chatting, asking you about how, you know, the club gets a lot of negative press. They don't use the press well at all, do they? And it just comes back to, it's the decisions that they make and the things that happen within the club that means that they get the negative press, because the press are just reporting on what actually happens. That could have been the start of something. And if they'd have just left him alone and let him get on with it, in the way that they should have done with Wellings. I thought the way that Salford played in the first half today reminded me of when Wellings came in.
Yeah.
And we won those 10 games. Or was it, and I particularly remember away at Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And we were in the Tangerine kit and they were closing down, winning the ball, breaking on the attack, playing in the top third of the pitch. And that's what the Salford were like in the first. I think if they'd have just left Wellings to get on with it, he would have had us playing that kind of football and probably would have had us out of this division by now, because he was a manager who cared about the club, who wanted to be at Oldham. Same with Scholes, same with Pete Wild. And we can buy into those characters as fans and we'll give them time.
Yeah.
It kills me.
Well, and the Pete Wild thing, I mean, I agree with everything that you said about Scholes. And even at the times, I think I'd sent Abdallah a message just saying, you know, this is a great move and I really hope that it comes out for us. Get a response, obviously. But for it to go the way it did, but the bigger one for me was Pete Wild, because Pete, I'm sure, would hold his hands up and say that given his background, his experience, and this isn't a slight on Pete because I think he's a great guy, I think he's a great coach, he shouldn't have been anywhere near that job. And this is Pete, who has grown up in Oldham. He's a Latics fan. It's your dream. It's the absolute dream. And he gets the job and we go and play at Fulham and we have that great day and he's on Match of the Day that night and it's like, yes, this is, you know, finally, this is something amazing. And he bins it off and goes to Halifax. What does that tell you? Like, it can't be brought into sharper focus than that. No. It really can't. Like, things, now they'll say it was family issues, etc., etc. But he left us, and then within however months it was, 3 months was it, he is at a part-time club. I think Halifax part-time, but in the conference, he's gone there instead. Like, I can't, if anyone ever says to me, oh, things aren't that bad and rah, 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 for me, Pete Wild says it all.
I think one of the annoying things for me is I'm not sold on Harry Kewell at all. I think what's happened is the quality of the coaches has got worse. We've had the right men for the job, I believe, in the past, in Wellings, Scholes and Wild and Bunn, probably. All four of them have got connections to the club. And since they've gone, we've had Benid, Dino, and now Harry Kewell. And none of those surpass. Because who's going to take the job? You've got someone like Harry Kewell who basically doesn't need the money. He just needs the opportunity. And, you know, this is his third strike, really.
Yeah.
he doesn't strike me as someone who's particularly tactically in play, particularly good. I don't know what he's like with the lads. I don't know what he's like on the training ground. He might be very good. He's obviously done really well as a player and all that kind of stuff. But I feel we've had the right men to take us forward. And every time one of those has gone, it's like taking another body blow. And just by the end of it, all your breath's gone and all the energy's gone out of your body. And you're just feeling like, and that's where we're at. And that's why even today, after that win, goal in injury time, we still don't feel like we should feel. We're still able to go down this, I was going to call it a rabbit hole. It's not really a rabbit hole, but these are still the most pressing issues. And it's not nice, is it? It's not.
No, and I think any manager there, you get Jose Mourinho in there and he'd struggle in the environment that it is and the circumstances that they've got to work under. I don't know Harry Kewell. I don't want to speak ill of him. I think a lot of managers, it's one strike and you're out. You go to a club, your first job, you don't do very well. You find it incredibly difficult to get another one. So Harry was at Crawley and that, there's differing views on how he did there. And then he went to Notts County and obviously Notts County wasn't great. For a lot of people, that's them done. So the chance to manage Oldham, even with everything that it appears to come with, is one that you can't turn down. So I don't have any kind of, it's difficult to say, the manager's messed it up again and we went to Cheltenham and the tactics were all wrong. There's just a much bigger picture there. And I think that the manager is not, we shouldn't be holding the manager responsible for what we see on pitch.
You see, the problem, I'm looking at that side today and I'm thinking, okay, Nicky Adams, I'm thinking, get him in the centre of midfield. And I'm thinking next season, how do you keep a player like him? And I'm trying to think about next season and I can't even go there because I'm not even able to think about, because obviously Danny Rowe, I wanted him to sign a new contract. So I wanted to see Rowe and McElhaney playing up front as a two. And I'd just get us back to 4-4-2. Bahambula on the right. I'd have had Rowe and McElhaney up top. Get someone for down the left-hand side. Nicky Adams in the middle of the park with another midfielder. And I can see a decent first 11 coming together. Obviously, Wheat is going, he's gone. He's not going to play another game for us despite what we want. But I can't because I've no idea what's going to happen, between now and the end of the season and then in the summer. Who's going to be here in terms of the management? Are they going to keep Harry to the end of the season, get rid of him? There's no reason to have any faith in the future, is there? And that's really difficult mindset to break away from. And it's a tough one. And we deserve a bleeding medal, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right. We do. As I said earlier on, it's just really hard to get involved in like discussions on tactics and stuff like that because it just, I don't really see what the difference it makes. Playing Adams at right back just seems really odd. We are crying out for an experienced head in the centre of midfield, a la McCann last season. So we bring somebody in like that and we play him at right back.
Yeah. Seems daft to me. I'd have him in the centre of midfield.
And you get Bahambula, you get away with Bahambula then because you get a smart, intelligent player behind him. Mopping up now, I know Bahambula is incredibly talented and he scored the goal today. He gives the ball away more than any footballer that I've ever seen playing for anyone. We're not good enough to get away with that, I don't think. But if you put Adams in the centre of midfield, you might have a bit more of a chance because he would give him license to do that kind of stuff. Yeah. At the moment, it just leaves us exposed every time he loses the ball.
Because people are saying, he puts in a good delivery and he does, and if you get him down that side. But things have to be going our way for him to be able to do that. If he's pinned back in his own half defending, he's not having an influence on the game, is he? He's just defending in his box, and that's no good. So I'm not sold on Kewell as a tactician. I'm desperate for some consistency. If Moore is going to stay as the sporting director, which it appears he is, then he needs someone to work with properly over a sustained period of time in order to build a proper squad for this level. I don't think Kewell...
Well, we've not seen anything that gives us any hope whatsoever that we're ever going to build a proper side. And it's, I don't get down to the club these days. I don't know the dynamics of the relationship. I only know what other people have told me. It's difficult. I mean, it's the guy's brother. So anybody would find it difficult to say to the brother, this isn't working.
I tell you what, if it were my brother, he'd tell me in 2 seconds. and I'd tell him and all. And there'd be too much, there's too much riding on it. I said this the other week. What he should have done is they should have come in, given a manager 2 or 3 years, and more should have just hung around in the background.
They could feasibly still salvage this. They made the right move. If they brought in the right manager and just said, look, crack on.
Yeah.
Crack on. We'll leave you to it. Give somebody a chance.
It takes the pressure off them, Mike, and all. They can turn and say, look, this is what's happening now, and let Moore go and get some sun. Go and let him go and...
But they can claim the credit.
But they can if it works, yeah. They can also take a little bit of pressure off them and say, look, we're doing what the fans think is the best idea. We're abandoning the sporting director role. We're getting a proper football manager at this level in, and his remit is to get us out of this division. He's got 3 seasons to put his squad together.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll do it in 1. Happy days. But the most frustrating thing about putting this podcast out every week is that you go around in circles every week and you end up coming back to the same points all the time.
Yeah. But that's the situation. It is what it is.
Yeah. Cracking finish though, wasn't it, for the winner?
It was. Yeah, wind assisted.
It really was. He struck it really well. He's got some nice touches. He's got a bit of quality about him.
They have.
Keeler done.
Lot of them have. There's a lot of similar players. I find a lot of them, not the biggest, not the strongest, but really good with the ball at the feet. And when they get into positions in the final third, they can be quite dangerous. But it's getting them in those positions. We've seen some great goals this season. I mean, God, the FA Cup game at Bradford, the goals that we saw there.
Yeah.
Which makes it frustrating because it's, for me, I know it's easier said than done, but for me, League Two is horrendous. The standard in League Two is absolutely horrendous. And I just think it shouldn't be that difficult to launch a promotion campaign. It really shouldn't.
You need to know the league. You need to know what works and what doesn't work.
But you need to sign players and get them in a system that will work.
Exactly. That's
week
the thing.
in, week out. And you need to make sure, if you're playing somebody at home and you're not finding a way through, well, then you go away with a 0-0 draw rather than, conceding. The number of stupid goals that we've conceded. It's difficult to believe what you're seeing. Sometimes that these are professional footballers. There are just people in that squad that don't have any business playing in League Two.
Yeah, they're very inconsistent at this level, aren't they? That's why they're at this level, as opposed to at a higher level. They're inconsistent, and maybe they're not mentally switched on or as much as you need to be to play at that higher level throughout a game. And yeah, it's just what worries me is what always worries me about coming down to League Two, that we'd never get out of it. That's what
we might do. Not sure it'd be the right direction.
Yeah, I know. Well, that was the thing that people were saying. Well, I just want something to happen when you're finishing 17th in League One, and you see it so many times when teams come down, they recalibrate, and then they get the momentum going in the right direction. They
come back stronger.
Yeah, and like we've already said on this particular podcast, I think that could have happened if they'd kept Wellens in charge and whatever, but they lost that opportunity early on. Now, all right, we're 5 points off the playoffs, but it's a hell of a long way to go before we play League One football next season.
Well, you never know. You know what? Maybe this is our year. Maybe we're wrong.
Maybe. Well, I'd love to be proven. I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I'd nothing greater satisfaction than seeing us go. I don't care as long as we go up. And I said this last week. We need a promotion so badly. We need something to celebrate so badly. We deserve it more than, like you said earlier, more than anybody. So maybe if we speak again, Mike, we will have in the intervening time had something to celebrate.
Fingers crossed.
I'll tell you what. I'll call you in 10 years.
If we've still got a football club in 10 years, I'll be happy.
There might be a chance then. But listen, thanks for coming on, mate. I appreciate it. And stay in touch, and let's hope that things turn around at some point before before we reach our 70s.
Yeah, keep the faith.
Oh, all the best, mate. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Take care. Bye now. The Boundary Park Alert System is a Studio 6 production. It's hosted, edited and mixed by me, Matt Dean, and you can contact me on Twitter at DublinOAFC. If you'd like to get in touch with us or contribute to the show, our email is bpalertsystem@gmail.com, and we're on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at OAFC Podcast. If you'd like to know more about Push the Boundary, you can visit pushtheboundary.co.uk and follow them on Twitter at PTB_OAFC. The title music for the show is Delirio by Manchester DJ and producer Starion. You can visit redlaserrecords.bandcamp.com for more info and the latest releases. If you like the show, please do review and subscribe on whichever platform you listen. Thanks for listening.